will be recorded, and it'll be of benefit to people to replay it and kind of go through it again. So it'll be available on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Okay, so if I can hand over to Claire Hobley, who is our operations manager, and thank you, Claire.
Hi, thanks, Coulson. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. We usually do a Carers Right event at Kingsway, and we have a nice big day with buffets and stuff. So thank you for coming over Zoom. I know it's not quite the same, but hopefully the information that you get is just as good. So I'm Head of Services for the Carers Service, and one of the things that I'm really keen to do is to make sure that carers are exercising the rights. One of the things that the advisors will do with our carers is sit down and go through their unique circumstances and help them know the rights under the Care Act. There's lots of things that carers are entitled to, plus the people that they care for. And it's really important that you are, you know, exercising your rights and making sure that you're getting what you need. Some other things that we do within the service, so as well as the one-to-one support from the advisors that can help you negotiate some of the things that can be tricky around social care, as well as some of that, we have an emergency planning service. So it's free to set up. And what it means is we'll help you create a plan B. So if something happens to you, that the person that you care for still has that support. And it's more important than ever this year. The government's advising that every carer has an emergency plan. Imagine if you've got to self-isolate and you can't go to that person that's relying on you. You know, you really need to know what you're going to do, and when you're poorly isn't the right time to be thinking about these things. So we're really urging every carer to sign up for an emergency plan, and all that means is that one of our lovely advisors, Anna, will give you a call and go through your plan, and you'll get a copy of that. So it's really easy to set up, but really effective. Another thing that we do at the service is benefit support. So I know you're going to hear a little bit about that later on, but we have benefits advisors that will help you claim anything that you're entitled to. So they can give advice, help with form filling for both you and the person that you care for. And we've also got a power of attorney form filling service. I know that Joe's likely to cover power of attorney this morning, so I won't labour that point too much. But I just want to emphasise that there's quite a few things that we do within the service to make sure that you're aware of your rights and that you're exercising your rights, and we'll support you to get the right things in place. So if you've got a question about anything, or you wonder if there's any little bits that you're missing out on that we can help you with, please give us a ring, because we're just all too happy to get what you need in place for you. So I think that's enough from me. Without further ado, am I handing you back to Coulson or Joe? I don't know which.
Yeah, if you can hand over to Joanne, if we can invite Joanne onto the stage, and Joanne's going to give you the information that you need all about your rights.
Okay, good morning everybody. I will just decide to share my screen as well. So I've tried not to make this a boring PowerPoint. The information that is taken and put on this PowerPoint is everything that you can get from local government. So I haven't reinvented the wheel. I've just taken snippets from what the NHS and the government are providing in terms of what the Care Act is, mental capacity. That's on there. My role today is to really look at it from a legal point of view, but also to help you understand that as in the layman's terms as well, what it means for the carers. I'm going to focus on mental capacity as well today and talk to you about powers of attorney, especially in the current climate. As Claire said, at the moment, it's a situation where there's a lot of things going on and you can feel quite powerless to help. And I'm going to be sharing my journey as well as a carer, as well as a solicitor, to look at it from both points of view, if that's okay. I'm going to ask that any questions are wait for the end, because what I possibly do is answer your question about 5 slides after you ask the question in the chat. So I'll try to go and address those afterwards. and not to be freaked out by the fact that you're all on mute. So I'm usually in the room interacting with you all, and now I'm not, so you're all just staring at me. So let's go through that. So as you've probably heard with any interaction with the carer service, is that we have the Care Act, and it was a big shake-up that was happening, and the focus was put back to have as many people that require care have as much independence as possible. And the aim is that they are still in control of their own care and support where possible. And that in turn will help those carers, because as a carer, you are often very much lost as to what you can do, what you can't do, what you should be doing. Where do you start with that? And this gives us the grounding that at all points, it helps us to know that the paramount objective is to allow that person that independence. And from there, it will circle out and it will be more clear. And that's what's happening in 2014. So the biggest changes, and I won't go through the Care Act in its entirety because that really would be boring, but what it does do for us as carers is allow more support by the local authority and places some responsibility back on the local authority itself anyway. So they are to provide care, they're to provide advice, and they're also supposed to be signposting. It's not a piece of legislation that's just put on the back burner and you've got to figure it out. So there's more emphasis on onus for the local authority to do that. It does provide the ability to do the assessments. So anybody now is entitled to an assessment regardless of their financial situation. I know that Claire mentioned that later on there's advice about benefits as a carer as well, but for the person that's receiving the care, they're going to get the assessments, and they're focused on well-being and outcome. It's all about, again, that independence. What do you need to get from this assessment? What does that person who you're caring for need? You realise what the outcome is for the person you're caring for, your job as a carer will get better as well. So rather than you feeling all the burden as a carer, you won't do. Well, that's the aim of it as well. And obviously there's now a care cap that gives that sort of, well, a cap that no adult has to spend more. So it's less of a postcode lottery as it used to be. And I'm not going to go into what it used to be because that's old news, it's moved forward now, but it does mean that it's a bit more universal and that you should be reviewed regularly and updated as well. It goes hand in hand with the Mental Capacity Act. And I think that this is slightly overlooked. And this is what I get asked a lot of questions about in the capacity of a solicitor is, when am I stepping in as a carer? When am I not stepping in as a carer? What is my duty as a carer compared to mental capacity? And like I said, that's one of the biggest questions. The Care Act has to follow the Mental Capacity Act because yes, you're a carer, but very much you end up being a carer simply because of the lack of capacity of the person that you're caring for. So it's important to understand what your duties are as a carer when it comes to looking after somebody in their capacity. And I've put there on the slide that basically in a nutshell, the Mental Capacity Act is to just protect human rights, and it's to protect those who can lack the mental capacity. But I'm going to talk to you about capacity because that's confusing. So that's what I want to look at today. So it's important because as in the Care Act, it's focused on independence and supporting. That's what the Mental Capacity Act is as well. Again, it's coming from a place of, it's important that those people who lack capacity can still get support to make their own decisions. And if you're getting that support, again, I'm coming back to it again, as a carer, you should have more guidance, therefore, or less burden that you're having to make decisions for people as well. So you get that core right, it will make your life easier as a carer as well, as long as you understand that that's your role. So lack capacity is important, and I'm going to go through that. It's not saying somebody doesn't it's not saying that somebody doesn't know what they're doing at all times. It's a lack of capacity. And there's ways and means that you as a carer have got the right to support those people who lack capacity. And I'm going to help you with that today. So again, I said it was going to start from a journey as me as a carer as well as a solicitor. And the only reason I am a solicitor that deals with this as a specialism is because of my journey as a carer. Those who've met me before will probably have an idea of my experience. But I'm going to put some real life experiences on the law for it. So it gives you a real handle of how to understand it. If I just preach legislation, it's going to go over your head and it's going to be more confusing, and I don't want that to happen. So this is my mum, Shirley. From a young age, I was helping Shirley to care for my gran who had Alzheimer's and lived with us. And then unfortunately, my mum developed early onset of Alzheimer's at 55. So we're talking about a lack of capacity. And I'm going to show you what that meant to my family and how it should resonate with you all as well. And my mum was the best mum ever, and she was also my best friend. And she was the pinnacle of being a hero for me in terms of, you know, how to be strong for your family and what caring role that she took on within that family as well. So I learned that when it was time for me to care for her, that I would know what to do and how to cope for it. And that's quite hard when you're suddenly looking after the person that's supposed to be your mum, and she's still quite young as well, is that you're suddenly a parent for a parent. That can be quite hard, and I know that quite a lot of you as carers, that's what you're feeling at the moment, is that you've got a lot of burden to look after yourself and for that person. So my mum was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at a young age. And then just as we're getting through the process of dealing with the Alzheimer's, she was unfortunately diagnosed with lung cancer as well. And I need to point out to you as carers that it's not always about Alzheimer's, dementia. It can be illnesses. It can be illnesses such as cancer that temporarily affect that person to look after themselves, and you suddenly have the role as a carer thrust upon you very suddenly with other things to deal with. So I want to help you through that, because of course I've had to live, breathe that and experience that. So as part of my journey, it was quite hard that I've got a family to look after as well as now a mother, and supporting my dad through that with any illness that he had at the same time. It feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders sometimes as a carer, and you don't know which way to turn. And even as a solicitor, it was still difficult because you don't know where to start first, and you need that signposting, and that's what the Care Act is supposed to do. And it's the most important job for the people at the carer service, is that you recognise when you are a carer, recognise when you should be seeking support, recognise what you're entitled to, and recognise how you should be getting the help. Because it's kind of like, I often say to my children, if you don't clean the bath, you can't have a shower in it. You can't clean yourself with something that's dirty. You can't be a carer if you are not getting care yourself or support yourself. So it's definitely important to know when we need to ask those questions and not just take it on our shoulders like a lot of times we do. It's like, I'll just get on with it. It's just my parent. It's just my mum. I just have to get on with it. No, you don't. You need to get that support. So how do they link to powers of attorney? I'm going to have that link constantly with powers of attorney and why they're so important. Because the powers of attorney are a tool for you to be able to deal with what's going on and be able to be the person that you're caring for. How awful is it that you're ready to be a carer, you're ready to understand your rights, you're ready to do the job, but you're prevented from it because you didn't do one particular thing, or there was not the legal document in place for you to do that. So the lasting powers of attorney allow you to be that carer in certain circumstances where the law asks you to be legally, well, you're legally obliged to do that. So it's critical for you in any challenge that you make of the local authority when arguing that the person you're caring for is not getting the care that you believe that they're entitled to. But to do that, to have that legal document, you need to be either an attorney, and I'm going to go through the documents later, or you need to be a court-appointed deputy. Just to note that a court-appointed deputy is somebody that the court have now appointed to be the person who's making decisions, because the power of attorney was not done before that person lost capacity. It's always about dignity, and I'm going to raise some poignant recent issues in the news about this. And it makes sure that you're acting on behalf of a person, whether it's for their welfare or whether it's for their finances. I'm going to focus a bit on welfare today, because again, that's the most poignant part of the news, and with COVID happening, it's probably on everybody's minds a little bit more. So what do you need to know about the Mental Capacity Act? Okay, it's about making decisions and it is law, but it's coming from a point of common sense as well. And I need to point that out to you, that it doesn't need to be as confusing as you think it might do. You need to go back to asking very much, what would you want? If it was you that this was happening to, what would you want? And you've got to have that in the back of your mind all the time. Now, capacity. Some people can make decisions about their own life all of the time. That's usually most of us on here, I would have thought. Some people, because of whatever illness they're suffering from, whatever condition that they're suffering from, it means that they're able to make only some decisions. Usually affects those with learning difficulties. And a small number of people can't make any decisions at all. So when you cannot make a decision about something, you are lacking capacity to do so. And the Mental Capacity Act says that those who lack the ability to make decisions, they must have support to try and make them, not to just ignore, oh, you can't make that decision, I'll make it for you. No. What do you need to do as a carer to support that person to try and make their own decision? So it also helps you as that carer and offers you that support and those boundaries you need so that you can support your family or friends when helping them to make a decision, not to take over their decision making. So it can be big decisions and it can be small decisions. And I put there some examples of some of the decisions that you might be asked to make for the person you're caring for when it comes to their welfare. So it can be what they're going to wear. It could be whether to let staff help them in the bath. Sometimes whether they should have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, down to silly things that you think are not important, but they are for that person. It's where they, where they're to live or whether to stay in the pub till late. You cannot assume that this person who's suddenly lacking capacity has not had a quality of life up until now, that perhaps being in the pub was a central point of their life on a Friday night, and that's where they're socialised. You need to help them and support them when making those decisions, however trivial you think that they may be, because as a carer, it's not what you think, it's what they think, it's what they feel, and you support them with that. For many of us, it's about health and care, so it can go to the big things about the doctors. And I'm going to share that journey as well with you. So capacity, big question. What does it mean? That's what Joe gets asked a question is all the time. My mum started to forget. That is what I hear a lot of. Be forgetful. Right. Forgetting doesn't mean somebody's lost capacity. A cognitive problem can be temporary as well. So when we need to make a decision about anything, as a human being at any time, we've got to be able to understand the information to be able to make a decision about something. We've got to be able to communicate that decision. And those two key things about understanding and thinking about it and then communicating it, sometimes there's a missing link somewhere. And it can be that the person's ability to do these things is affected temporarily for it. So definitely for my mum, in the early onset of Alzheimer's, making a decision about any of her treatment moving forward with her cancer treatment was quite difficult because she wasn't able to remember it long enough to make that decision. And if she can't remember it, she can't communicate it. But it didn't mean she didn't understand it. And there's a difference. So we've got to have that in our minds all of the time. So if you ask my mum, what would you do about if you needed an operation for your cancer? Would you have chemo? Would you have an operation? Would you have this? Her ability to understand that and to give and communicate an answer was there. It was there. It was, yes, that was, I do chemotherapy, etc. But unfortunately, one of the chinks in the chain was that she couldn't remember it long enough. So the question she kept asking me was, who's got cancer? So do you see my problem with the issue of capacity there and the differences that you have? So because she couldn't remember long enough that it was her that had cancer, she can't effectively then communicate what she wanted to do about her own treatment for herself. And that's when you need to look at the capacity. What can I do to support that? What can I do to enable her to still make her own decision despite this issue over her capacity? Again, many people think it is dementia or Alzheimer's. It's not. It can be epilepsy. You can't ask somebody who's suffering from a seizure one day to make a decision that, you know, that they could happily make on any other day. We all have bad days, and some of the conditions that you can face as a carer, the person you're supporting, is that it might just not be right now. Very often I get called out to give advice about capacity or to do powers of attorney for people with urinary tract infections. So when somebody, if you've ever experienced any of your loved ones that have a urine infection, that can temporarily have quite the effect. You wouldn't believe that it does, but it definitely does. People with urinary tract infections can hallucinate. So just because somebody doesn't have the capacity for a period of time doesn't mean they've never got it or they're not going to have it in the future. It's transient. And possibly if you've met somebody with it, you can have moments of lucidity and then not have. So it's important that you remember that and you don't take over somebody's capacity because it was transient. You've got to give them an opportunity, and it's crucial you understand therefore what capacity is in your duty and your role as a carer. So how do we assess it? So I've given you a little hint before of how to assess capacity, to know when you should be stepping in and when you shouldn't. Always you should be turning to medical professionals for advice about that to determine capacity. But questions to ask yourself were set out in the Mental Capacity Act, and they did do a two-stage test of capacity. So, is it an impairment of the mind or brain, or is it just an illness? So for my mum, both happening at that time. Or are there external factors, drug use, alcohol use, or anything like that? And you might find that, like me, you have a mix of two of those problems. And the second step is, does that impairment mean that they're unable to make some decisions but still can make others? Like I said, it fluctuates. So not only can you not take over somebody's decision making because you deem that they lack capacity time-wise, transient, but also make sure you're not taking over certain decisions as well. So my mum could still make certain decisions, but then the big stuff, maybe not. This is absolutely crucial you have in the back of your mind. For those who don't think that they're a carer yet, but they're getting their parents relying on them more and more, or you yourself are relying on your children more and more for simple things like can't get on the Wi-Fi, can't get Amazon to deliver, can't do this, can you just nip out to the bank for me to do that, I can't get on my internet banking. Clearly they're showing you and they're demonstrating that at some point along the line, their decisions or their ability to do things or understand how things work is present in some respects, but not the others. But you need to get yourself prepared because what we will say is that in our experience as carers, it kind of starts off small and develops. So the little things become big things, and it's important that you understand from an early start capacity and what you need to do, so you can get the right support before it's too late, like Claire said, and you're fighting a battle against something that could have been easily prevented. So give somebody the time to allow them to make that decision themselves, not just snap into it. I had to talk to my mum. I couldn't just go, yeah, she can't make her own decisions, I'll make decisions for her. No, give them the opportunity. You need to give them the opportunity to understand the information and retain that information, or weigh it up. And it's only when you feel satisfied that you've done that, you take the next step. And if you've not done that, you're not doing the right thing as a carer. Yes, it's all about your rights as a carer, but you've got to provide the right and not take that away from the people that you're caring for. How would you feel if somebody was suddenly speaking over you and making those decisions that actually, no, I can make that one for myself? You've got to try. So I want you to follow these golden rules. You must assume that somebody can make decisions unless they're sure that they can't. What was the old saying that they used to do? Assume makes an ass out of you and me. Never assume anything. They'll surprise you. People will surprise you that they were actually able to cope with that decision. Everybody is different. This is not a blanket approach. Everybody is different. And what my mum could and couldn't do on a daily basis fluctuated as well. So it was important that I asked her every day that there was a decision to be made, and not just base it on what happened last week, that she could or she couldn't. The cancer was affecting her on a daily basis. The tumours were going to her brain and confounding the Alzheimer's. So again, I shouldn't just assume on anything with that. They might be able to decide what to wear. Let them try and make that decision. So rule number 1 is assume somebody has capacity unless you can prove that they do not. That's the number 1 thing that I get asked. My dad's forgetful, right, but you can't assume that he doesn't have capacity. It's forgetful, that's not capacity. Golden rule number 2, as a carer, you are supposed to give as much support as you can to make those decisions. It might be that they're just struggling with the words that you're using. Break it down for them. Try and involve them a bit more. Use different language. It might be a communication thing. With Alzheimer's in particular, from my point of view, the things that my mum could do prior to the Alzheimer's kicking in, the woman could multitask forever. She worked in a bank, she was awesome. The Alzheimer's suddenly made that one task was overwhelming. So when I'm asking her to make a decision, does it appear that she doesn't understand, or is it just because she's overwhelmed? So if I broke it down into small bits, she probably could make that decision for a lot of things. So you've got to do that. You've got to be able to do that and involve who you can, but don't do that too quickly. It's not okay to say, oh, it's too hard to involve someone, I'll just make that decision. How would you feel if that was you? How would you feel if it was a language barrier now? We don't do it to people who need interpreters. You shouldn't be doing it to somebody who's struggling with communicating. And I want you to think about the information. Like I said, change your language. You could be using signing, photos, or symbols. It could be yes or no by pointing their eyes in different directions. And also, certainly at the end of my mum's life, her body was shutting down and she wasn't able to speak, but I assure you, she raised her eyebrows a number of times at anything I said to let me know quite exactly how she felt when I was making jokes that she probably found that they weren't that funny. So she could communicate to me, and you've got to make those concessions. You wouldn't do it to somebody who had a language barrier. Don't do it to somebody who's suddenly now needing a different way to communicate with you than they previously were. Rule number 3, right, unwise decisions. Again, it's not about you as the carer at this point, it's about the person. So adults have the right to make whatever decisions that other people sometimes disagree with. So going out in the pouring rain, smoking 20 cigarettes a day. My children often make decisions to play on their machines and devices, and you know, that's what I disagree with. you can't step in because you disagree with them. You don't hold the person you're caring for to your standards or your belief system or your rules and regulations. It's what's in their best interest. What do they do? And it's important you get to know that part of it with it. And if the person is able to decide and to understand those things, let them do it. Absolutely. You shouldn't be stepping in. As a carer, again, it's back on the Care Act with it. Independence, support, not take over. So have that in the back of your mind as well. And these are primary things that we tell every attorney when they're making a power of attorney, that this is what the attorney's role is. It's not to take over, not to step in. It's not you, it's them. Your paramount concern is to act in the best interests of that person. We always say to those who are making powers of attorney, pick your attorneys wisely. I don't ever personally like to be a professional attorney for somebody I don't know, because I feel that I would let them down acting in their best interest. If I have no idea who they were as a person before they needed my support, what they would have done in their everyday life before they had the problem of lacking capacity, I only prefer to do it for my family. And we advise very strongly from a legal point of view that you do pick your attorneys wisely, because it's hard to know what somebody's best interests are if you don't know them. So it's what's best for them. There's a checklist. Can the decision wait until they can make it themselves? Like I said, if it's a urinary tract infection, should we not wait a few days for the antibiotics to kick in? How can we help? And that goes back to the previous one about it's the way you communicate now. That can be really frustrating, by the way, for somebody who's dealing with somebody with Alzheimer's, because the nature of Alzheimer's means that they think everything's a conspiracy and they're very suspect about anything that you try to do. And it can feel a little bit overwhelming for you as a carer to try and communicate, but you've got to try. And what do other people who know the person, what do they think? You know, it's not always on your shoulders. If you've got to make that decision, seek help about that decision. Ask somebody who knows them very well, what would they do? So you can be assured that the decision you made can't be criticised. And finally, find the least restrictive way of doing what needs to be done. So give them the freedom. So just a quick question for you. There's a man who likes to be outdoors a lot, but he's currently falling and hurting himself a lot. What do you think his staff should do? This is how simple it can become. What should his staff do? Should they keep him indoors where he's safe? Or should they let him go outside wearing protective clothing or other things and stop him getting hurt? Our gut reaction might be, keep him indoors, he needs to be safe, don't let him out, don't let him out. That's what you'll be telling the carers, don't let him out. No, it's not what the Care Act says. It's not what the Mental Capacity Act says. How would you feel if all you ever liked to do was go outdoors and somebody suddenly said you're not going out? It'd be awful. It's prison. I mean, Boris is doing it to us all right now, but ultimately, you are supposed to do B. You are supposed to let him go outside wearing protective gloves, support that person with it. There are limits to the best interest. What's in somebody's best interest might be going ahead and doing some sort of treatment, but you can't use too much restraint. There's a fine line. So I've put a few examples up there. You've got holding somebody still for an injection that they don't want. Is restraint. So carers cannot take away those rights without proper approval, and you need to get support from the medical world about that. And again, when Boris lets us all out and he's not locking care homes down and locking our doors and telling us we're in tier 3, please bear that in mind as well, because more than ever right now, we all need some freedom. And it's not closing that door for the good, it's for your own good, like we used to say to our children. It's not. These people are usually adults. Don't take away their rights in that respect. So do not go against the wishes of someone who is legally allowed to make decisions on their behalf. So I've given you an example, and I may as well have wrote my own mum's name there. John needs an operation. He can't decide for himself whether to have it. A court said that John's brother is allowed to take decisions about his health, but John can't make himself. John's dad thinks that John should have an operation. John's brother doesn't think the operation is in the best interest. But because the court said John's brother is the person who can decide for him, John does not have the operation. Unfortunately, if anybody's ever been in my situation, when my mum did need an operation for the cancer tumours for quality of life, she absolutely had lost the ability to make that decision for herself. By that time, she had no idea who had cancer and what the operation would be for. It fell to the attorneys to do it. That was me. My dad didn't want her to have the operation. He didn't want to lose my mum any earlier than he had to do because of the risks involved in the operation. It wasn't about what my dad wanted. It was about my mum. What would my mum want? And you must put yourself in those shoes, as hurtful as it is and as onerous as it is. What would my mum have wanted? And she wanted the operation. She would have absolutely done that operation. And therefore it was my decision, but only because I had the legal ability to do so, only because I had the power of attorney in place. Otherwise, my ability to care for her, to have that operation, to give her quality of life in her later stages of cancer would have been taken away from me. So I'm a carer who can't care. And that's a difficult thing to look at. And that's unfortunately, in my line of work, I see that constantly. And carers can't go against advanced decisions. So if you knew on a religious ground that there was to be no blood transfusion, you couldn't then go against that. If somebody's made an advanced decision that they don't want to be resuscitated or they don't want some sort of treatment, you shouldn't go against that either. Again, you're taking away somebody's human right. They've already told you what they want. You can't override that. So like I said to you before, having that power of attorney to enable you to be a carer is crucial, because if you get to the situation where, like I said before, you're a carer without the ability to do your job, the lack of control is ridiculous. You, in a heartbeat, you guys are all, as carers, stepping up to what you need to do, whether you realise it or not, whether you think you're a carer or not. When you are looking after somebody else in any way, you are starting that journey as a carer. And to then get told at any one point, you can't help with that decision making. You know what's the best thing to do. You know how to act in somebody's best interest, but you don't have that legal ability. The helplessness for all parties is horrendous. And you don't want that lack of control. You don't want to be in the position where I see it all the time. So it's crucial that when you are making any decisions about somebody's best interest, whether that is financially the case or whether that is due to somebody's welfare, then it's important that you have clear guidance on how to do that. So as a carer, you have rights, but only if you are legally recognised as that carer sometimes. And that's by getting the powers of attorney, and there are two types. It is, we call them lasting powers of attorney, and I've abbreviated it to LPA. So there's one that deals with the financial decisions, and this looks after managing somebody's bank account or building society. And for some people, it can just be that. It's overwhelming to deal with the banks, etc. And you want to take over that role for them because they're asking you to. And you do with their money what they're asking you to, or what is in their best interest. And sometimes that's as simple as making sure that the bank accounts remain open to pay for somebody's care whilst they're in the care of the local authority if they are self-funding, and to make sure that you're not being asked as a third party to pay because there's money there. It's just in a frozen bank account because that person lacks the capacity to look after their own accounts. That can be quite stressful. It could be paying bills. It could be selling a home because they want to come and live with you. I definitely did this for my parents when my mum was moving house with me to be able to live with me, so I could help care for her a bit closer to home before she was diagnosed with cancer. It can be used as soon as it's registered as well. So it enables somebody who potentially isn't even lacking capacity but physically has an issue. You're caring from them physically but not mentally. It helps you do that. I use mine for my dad because he doesn't want to deal with the banks and the big decisions like that anymore. since he lost my mum. And then you've got the health and care one. This is crucial for any assessment for care, for eligibility for care, to be able to challenge any care that you feel that the person you're caring for is not getting or it's not right. This one is absolutely crucial. The one that people put off the most as well. It can go down to the daily routine of washing, or massively for life-sustaining treatment. Like I said, my mum going in for an operation that may or may not have ended her life because of the risks. It's a hefty document. It's very powerful. And this only kicks in once capacity is lost. So I want to be clear that if somebody is suffering from urinary tract infections, as I used as an example, and it's transient, your attorney can swoop in when they need to help, and then get to the background the minute your capacity comes back. So it enables this ability to come and go and be as flexible as, unfortunately, capacity can be. Now, for most people, the challenge is that people don't take out the powers of attorney either early enough or at all, because they feel that they are suddenly relinquishing control to a carer when they didn't need to. And I get that it's the same thing again and again. I'll do it when I need it. When you need it, it's too late. It's tantamount to saying, I don't need car insurance because I haven't had an accident. So what am I paying for it for? What am I getting insurance for? I haven't had an accident. You don't all go out intending to have an accident either. But when you do, you're glad you've got it. You're quite happy that you've had car insurance and never claimed on it, but you've been paying for it. It's the same thing. It's as if to say that you are closing the door after the horse has bolted, kind of thing. The powers of attorney are there to protect the person. They are there to allow that person to retain control. And they are there to make sure that their wishes are being adhered to through a mouthpiece that they have selected themselves and nobody is thrust upon them. So imagine that everything you hold dear, your family, your money, your house, your welfare, all of that is controlled by you currently as that person, and it's in a safe and you're the only person with the key. If that key got locked inside and you no longer have the key because you've lost capacity, who would you want? Or who do you believe you should have given a key to? Who should have been the key holder if you couldn't do it yourself? And if your answer is the carer, the person that's caring for you already, then that was obvious. You've got to give the key to a key holder that you have chosen, so that when the time comes and you no longer have your own voice, that the key holder that you've selected to have your best interests at heart has got the key to that safe, because the only people who are breaking into that safe, if there's no key, are the local authority, and they're making decisions. And your carer is stuck. They have no ability. And it doesn't matter how small of a job it is right now, or how, again, if you don't believe that you're a carer, if you're looking after a parent in any capacity, that's coming at some point. And if it doesn't, brilliant. But it's about being prepared. So it's not a loss of control. A loss of control is when the local authority making decisions when you wanted it to be your child, your best friend, whoever it is that's caring for you now. Give them that ability. If you're happy that they're caring for you while you're poorly, why would you not want them to be able to do more onerous things and not have the local authority come in and tell them you've nothing to do with this? So it's all about retaining control. You've made your decision and nobody's making it for you. So I get asked a lot about that timeline, and I get asked a lot about when should I do things, and what do these things mean. So I get asked a lot about the LPA, which is the power of attorney, and I get asked about a will, and I get asked about probate. And probate is a period of time after somebody has died. All of these things require you nominating somebody else because you can't do it. So if you think about it, if you're willing to, most people know what a will is, but it's the legal document that you're nominating somebody to do the paperwork after you've died to make sure your money goes to who you want to go to. But that only kicks in on death. People are overlooking the 20 years before they die in terms of a power of attorney. You might be alive, but not have the ability to make those decisions. So if you understood what you needed to do for a will, because you're not there to make a decision, who's going to do it? It's the same thing with the power of attorney. It's just before. And probate's afterwards. Who's gonna do all the things I need to do after I've died? So again, you need to be thinking of your life as a journey, and you need to be thinking about that with anybody that you're caring for, is that you get the documents in place to allow you to do what you're doing and always retain your rights as that carer. So as I said, time is of the essence. Do not wait until it's too late. I can't tell you how many people I have sat down, breaking down in tears in front of me, that they are now prevented from helping their parents. It's too late usually. You find out that you needed one when you can't get one, because of course, to do a power of attorney, that person needs to sign the document, and if they don't understand the document according to the Mental Capacity Act, they're not giving you that ability to be a carer, and your rights are taken away. Unless there's a power of attorney in place, actually no one is in a position or of authority to make any decisions. So the local authority will usually step in. Bittersweet for couples that have been together and married for 50 to 60 years, and suddenly you've got a professional meddling with what you want to do on behalf of your wife, and that's very crucifying. And unfortunately, those who distrust the most are the children. They tell the parents not to bother with it. Don't worry, I'm doing the job already. I'm caring for you. I'll keep doing that. I'm not going to be there. And suddenly they've done the parents. You as a carer, you've done a misjustice to both the person you're caring for and yourself, because you've just locked yourself out the ability to do any of it. So definitely, time is of the essence. And I just wanted to point out to you, it's not only just my journey. Let's point out some of the things finally that have been in the news. In the recent news, we've had, can you see, I think it's on the right of your screen, it'll be Kate Garraway. A lot of people know who Kate Garraway is. Is it Good Morning Britain or This Morning or something? Kate Garraway has been struggling financially with, as she says, the mess that has ensued because her husband was diagnosed with COVID quite early on in the lockdown, and he's lacked capacity because of the COVID. And that came, like a steam train to her. And she's struggling financially with it because, of course, if somebody's lacking capacity, the finances are all locked up. So cash flow is now a problem for her family, but also about making decisions, because I'm too young to get a power of attorney, or she wasn't caring for him when it hit. So again, the advice is that if you get into a certain age, 50 plus, it's recommended by the government that you have a valid power of attorney. So she's still struggling, and she's very vocal about that, and I'll urge anybody to go and have a quick nosy on the internet about Kate Garraway's struggles, and that's highlighting the importance of COVID and that how it can come on very quickly. And again, to the left of your screen, if anybody remembers in the news, probably about 3 weeks ago perhaps, on the left you've got Leandra Ashton. She was in Coronation Street. She was an actress a number of years ago in Coronation Street. And you've got her mum on the right and then her gran in the middle. Now, just before the lockdown occurred at the beginning of November, the second lockdown, her and her mum wanted to be able to go into the care home, bring her grandma home so that they could have her in the bubble rather than have that I can't visit at the care home situation. She was arrested. The mum was arrested for trying to go and bring her own mother home to care for her at home. Do you know why? No power of attorney. There was no welfare power of attorney in place that gave that lady in the middle with the pink hat, that gave her daughter, her carer, the ability, the legal right to do so. She was arrested. I mean, she was de-arrested later, but where's her mum now? Still in the care home. Couldn't bring her home because of that document. It wasn't done in time. So don't assume that you have the right, just because you have been caring for somebody or you are related to them, that you have the right to make those decisions when they cannot. And that just highlights to you what's happening at the moment due to COVID and how important that is. So I'm hoping that you have had some information today about your rights as a carers in terms of what the Care Act allows you to do. You've just got to make sure that nobody takes that ability away, and that at the forefront of your mind always is, what does the person that you're caring for need? And once you understand that, once you understand the capacity, what they can and can't do, what they can and cannot make decisions about, the weight off your shoulders will be off somewhat, that you can relax and it's not overwhelmed with, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what I should be doing. And if you are worried about anything moving forward and you are thinking to yourself, you know, when is the best time to get a power of attorney? What should I be looking out for? Because it's not as obvious at the moment, then absolutely, I've got some documentation that I can fire to you if you want to privately email me or anything like that, that I can say, these are the things you need to be looking out for. These are the small things you can do without the powers of attorney, and this is when you really need to start thinking about it. I'm sure that there's going to be questions in the chat, so I'll let you go ahead with those questions. Shall I just go into the chat?
So, Joanne, the first question is, how would one go about getting an assessment?
An assessment from the local authority.
I think it's that question.
So an assessment on capacity can be done by the GP. So if they're not already under the care of the local authority, you're not already seeing social workers, etc., and you're worried about capacity, the first place to start is going to be your GP. They will do basic assessments on capacity, and sometimes they can provide a report saying somebody has the capacity or somebody doesn't. It can be a professional, and if it is the local authority that are already in dealing with you, a social worker can also do that as well. It's the relevant professional that is around you with whatever you're dealing with. So it could be that you are under the NHS for certain things, needs and health, and it could be that one of the neurologists that are dealing with you or memory clinic, etc., do that. But yeah, if it's from the outset, it's going to be going back to the GP. But again, don't assume somebody hasn't got capacity until you can establish that they don't. It might be the way that somebody's speaking to them. When I go out and see clients for powers of attorney, sometimes there's an assumption by the children that they've lost capacity. It's not, it's just the way that they were being spoken to. I can speak to somebody and deem that they have capacity to do certain things or make certain decisions when perhaps some people thought that they didn't, because they applied a blanket approach and they weren't approaching it correctly. Are there any more questions? I can't see the chat right now, so I've got my
So we've got someone else who's just emailed it in to us, so I'll read it out to you.
Yeah.
I have a friend who employs a family member as a PA to help them care for their relative. This PA is taken unfair advantage of by not wanting to share the hours of the direct payment, by not paying their part of the household expenses, taking the respite vouchers for themselves. When confronted by the carer, they ignore them as they know that they can get away with it.
So there's a power of attorney, there's an attorney in place and it's not the person who's caring. Is that
I'm
right?
not sure. I'll just finish off what they've said. In the past, they have warned and fired them from the job, but slowly manages to get the upper hand again. They can't really ask anybody outside, as if they do, they worry things might get worse for the cared for or themselves, especially the council. it is a difficult situation. The PA has a long history of financial, emotional, verbal abuse. The carer has taken loans and other debt so as not to rock the boat. The carer can't cope without the support of the PA, even though they are abusing in other ways. The PA does have a lot of positive points in that they do a good job looking after the person who needs care.
Okay, so part of that's a really specific situation that requires advice specifically to that situation. If there's any doubt over an attorney's ability to do the job, you've got to again have in the back of the mind that if capacity was there when that person chose their own attorney and signed the document based on their decision to nominate that attorney, there's a level of respect that's got to be had from the outset. So just because you disagree that they shouldn't be attorney doesn't necessarily mean that you could challenge, but you still can challenge. So there is an ability to go back to the Office of the Public Guardian or the Court of Protection and challenge somebody's role as an attorney if it is felt that they are not acting in somebody's paramount well-being or their best interest, or is mismanaging. That would be a contentious issue and they would have to do that. But again, always have that in the back of the mind, because that is what the court will ask. They'll say, well, hang on a minute, you can't just disagree with who's been nominated unless you can adduce evidence that this is the case and that they are mismanaging. So we do get that a lot, where people disagree with who's been attorney, and it's why it's crucial to have legal advice when making powers of attorney sometimes, because the donor, the person who's making the power of attorney, often has some ideas about having one child and cutting out two other children, and you know that they're asking for trouble because the two attorneys, the two non-attorneys can have a problem with it and raise issues. So it's important that the powers of attorney are drafted with fitness for purpose and advice for that particular circumstance as well. But yeah, it sounds like this person needs to seek advice as to whether it's prudent to go back to the court to challenge the attorney's ability and see whether they're acting in the best interest or not.
Okay, we've got another one just come in. Is this person a PA for a direct payment or attorney through power of attorney? Need clarity.
I'm not sure what the question is there, to be honest.
No, I think that's for me to deal with. Sorry, what was that?
Read that to me again.
Is this person a PA as for direct payment or attorney through power of attorney?
Okay.
Need clarity. Personal assistant.
Oh, personal assistant.
I think it's personal assistant.
Right, so a personal assistant could suggest that they're just somebody who helps out, or it could be something to do with a business there. I'm not sure. I think that one's quite specific. But somebody who is helping out with somebody's accounts, a third party signatory on accounts, or somebody's receiving benefits for somebody as a guardian or a bit of an authority like that, is different from a power of attorney. So just because you're doing that role doesn't mean that you assume the roles of an attorney. So actually, it could be that this person who's this PA, the person who they're looking after, really needs to make their own power of attorney, or if they lack the capacity, seek advice about having the appropriate person appointed by the court. Are there any more questions?
I think there's just one more, Isma, that's just popped up. Can you say it?
What happens if there are two attorneys and one becomes unwell to the extent that their judgment is then questionable?
You can do one of two things. It depends again, and just going back to the importance of making sure that a power of attorney is drafted properly and advice is given, because it's not a one size fits all. There are different ways attorneys can act. Depends whether it's jointly or severally. Just jointly, there's a sole, there's a replacement, and all of these all of these ways and means that you can draft that give people the role of attorney, but in different circumstances. So it would depend on whether the attorney that's struggling with their own capacity or is temporarily ill, it depends what the power of attorney says, how they can act, whether it's jointly or severally with the other one or not. Again, you could get capacity tested on that person, or again, ask the court to think about their ability to be an attorney. But that would be a case by case dependency, because it should have been drafted to take into account that you could have one attorney who is not able to do the job. Because if my mum had my dad as her attorney, at the time she needed that decision, she would have come a cropper, because my dad was actually in intensive care himself with illness, so it ruled out the attorney anyway, one of the attorneys anyway, and it was how it was drafted. So they need to take specific advice, and again, crucial that when you are doing the powers of attorney, they are drafted fit for purpose for your family circumstance, and you have the legal advice to do so.
Lovely. Any more questions on the chat?
No, that's it. That's it on the chat, unless anyone else has got questions.
If anybody has any questions, if you can put your thumbs up or unmute. No? Okay. Okay, we've had a slight change in the programme, as one of our speakers has had to leave to look after her cared for. That's something that often happens, that you plan something as a carer, you want to do something, and you can't because your caring role takes over. So just to add to some of the things that Joanne was saying, thanks Joanne, that was absolutely fantastic, and a lot of information there which we have recorded and can be played back for people to refer to. So at the Carers Service, we also have benefits advice, and we can provide you with benefits advice on anything relating to PIP, DLA, attendance allowance, universal credit, and carers allowance, which is really, really important. The financial side of caring can sometimes be very difficult, so please access our service and give us a ring. And give us a ring on our number 01254 688 440 to make an appointment with two of our benefits advisors, Vicky Bentley and Yasmin Khalil. So that service is also available to you. And I think the last question, there was an inclination that it was relating to a little bit on direct payments. So we can refer you also to the advisors at the council who deal with direct payments as well, to get further kind of information on there. Okay, and I think that is it really for our informative morning, unless anybody has any questions. Can I bring Claire Hobley back on to end the morning and give thanks to our keynote speaker and throw any insights on this morning?
Yeah, thanks, Coulson. I just wanted to thank Coulson and some of the other members of the team that have helped you to organise this, because you've done a great job, especially, you know, trying to organise this remotely and get everybody to be across Zoom and the logins and everything. So well done. But also a massive thank you to Joanne Bury of Bury Solicitors. I know that you've always been so good at coming to talk to us. I always learn something at your talks as well, and I think sharing your story of your mum as well makes it really real for our carers, because we feel like you get what, you know, what we're doing and where we're coming from. So thank you again for your sharing your experiences and your knowledge. And like Coulson said, if you have any questions around any benefits, anything around, you know, there's issues there with care packages and PAs, isn't there? Come to the service, because we are here to give you that information and advice and support. And even if you just want to chat, that's all right to come to. It doesn't have to be on a legal matter. So yeah, without further ado, I think we're. I'd love to be opening a buffet table now up in Kingsway, but obviously that isn't going to happen. So just thank you, and I believe that we can get the video on YouTube at some point, hopefully. If you need to rewatch it and look back over anything, it'll be there.
Yeah, can I just add, Claire, before we finish, just something came to mind. We are going to have themed coffee mornings, which provide information on finances, well-being, advice, information, especially at this moment in time when everybody is kind of struggling. So please try and come to our coffee mornings. And the next one is on the 8th of December. And that's a money-saving coffee morning where you can get information how to manage your budget, how to cut your fuel costs, anything that is going to help you save money. So please do check out our activities. We have so much on offer to help you get a little bit of a break, to get to learn something whilst you're in lockdown on Zoom. And if you need help to get on Zoom, if you know people that, I mean, you're already on Zoom, but if you know people need help to get on Zoom, then just get in touch with us. We are really a holistic service and we really want to help people. Thank you. Shall I hand it back to you, Claire, just to finish off and just say...
I think I've finished off now, Coulson.
Thanks everybody, I think, for coming along.
You can sing.
We can unmute people if they want to say anything.
Chat, yeah.
Anybody wants to give any feedback, please do so on the chat. Okay. Thank you. I think we're going to end this now. Thanks, everybody. I'll hand it back to Isma so you can end the session.